Hi everybody, my name is Jackson Swindle, and for those of you who are familiar with sports, you may know that the United States isn't really known for its soccer talent. It's known for almost every other popular sport like baseball, basketball, football, hockey, volleyball, and any other country, there's really only one sport that the most of the country follows and supports, and that's normally soccer, and they're known for it. In other countries, sports are taken seriously because they're it's a for some it's a way out of poverty, and it could be the only way to make a living if all you know is a sport. So youth development is highly valued, therefore paving a way for more young athletes to become a professional. Here in the States, we have a system called the draft. When it comes to selecting athletes to become part of a professional team, the draft is a system where the most collegiate athletes and some high schoolers, that's rare, like Kobe or LeBron, you know, they or some international athletes like Djokovic or whatever, um, can choose to participate in the draft. And usually the teams they have different rounds, usually 2 to 7, depending on the sport. They all have different rounds in the draft because there's different amount of teams, different amount of players. The order of the selection is by a lottery based on the performance of each team in the previous season. So if a team were to come in last place, they were given much better odds of getting a first pick than the team who won the league the previous year gets the lowest odds. With that being said, there's an incentive for professional teams to come in last place in America because there's a reward which takes competition away from the game. And that's what I want to see changed. If there were to be a drastic change like this in American sports, it would start with putting a higher value on youth development. Many conversations in the soccer world leads to youth development. American youth development has progressed since the 1980s when soccer first hit the States, but American fans, media, and executives can't reach an agreement on what needs to be done, but they know U.S. soccer is far from its potential. A guy named Tom Ferry, he's the executive director of Aspen Sports and Society program. He said in an article that kids sports has seen an explosion in travel team culture where rich parents are writing checks to get their kids on super teams from 2 counties or 2 states away, like all over the place. When these kids move to the travel team, they're pulling bodies out of the local leagues and stuff like that, which is just leaving those kids kind of like looking at their future, coming kind of in behind, and that's what a classes system is. And the travel team talents and the local leftovers, that's what it is. An article written by a journalist named Jamie Hill wrote on this soccer blog called American Soccer Now, discusses where the majority of America's talent comes from and why. And at the top list with the most active pro players in the world right now from large cities where there's MLS academies available and the best in that area. Academies are provided by the U.S. Soccer Organization. It's a program called the Youth Development Academy. It's the closest thing a young athlete or a young soccer player here in the States can be to being a pro without being pro. Um, MLS teams are known for having the most dominant teams, but larger clubs in high populated areas like here in Orange County, they can afford to have these teams, but it's costly because once you're at the academy level, your parents aren't paying for you to play anymore. It's no longer recreation, and parents don't have to pay for their children to play because those players have earned that spot to be there, and the focus is on development. I my freshman year in high school, I was on this club, Patio Doors. I was grateful to be with the academy, but like I said, it's competitive. I was only able to be there for 1 year, so. But it's just the academy requires extensive travel for a lot of people. That's difficult, and they can't commit because a lot of Americans live that lifestyle that they can't really commit, and it's kind of materialistic. That wasn't my case. I just wasn't good enough at the time. You know, I researched this book called Dream Hoarders. It's by this economist, Richard Reeves, who wrote that the economic mobility in the U.S. has been declining for the past few decades because opportunity holding. Um, it's like where, like, for example, where like rich parents pull strings to get their kids into certain schools or internships or certain jobs, and in doing so they snatch opportunities from the less fortunate. And some people would say that's just the way things go, but I don't know. Some countries, or not some countries, most countries, players can get paid as a youth, but the parents get compensated instead. um, the youth sports is a $17 billion industry. That's bigger than the MLB and almost just as much as the NFL, and none of those kids are getting paid. Like, it's ridiculous. Athletes get to choose where they go to high school, where they go to college, but when they go pro, they have no choice here in the States because they just get drafted. In an article I wrote on I read on USA Today. This journalist has covered the controversy multiple times that I read up, and he doesn't think there's nothing wrong with having the teams just having to getting to sign amateurs instead of drafting them. If you want to play professional basketball or football or baseball or hockey, there's you pretty much just have to go where the league tells you to go. It's hard to get the owners and league executives to go for this because there's no one representing amateurs or youth players in big meetings. Recently, a couple weeks ago before quarantine, NBA passed a lottery reform, and coach for the Detroit Pistons, his name's Steve Van Gundy. He doesn't agree. He doesn't think the steps were big enough. He thinks they should just get rid of it altogether. He would just deal with the salary cap and sign a rookie for as much as he wants and just follow the rules. He thinks that's what should be done. He thinks it opened the door for small market teams that offer more money than those big market destinations, giving players the opportunity to go and maybe start a legacy somewhere or something like that, start up with a lower team. Also, this player, he's a professional. He's on the U.S. national team. His name's DeAndre Yedlin. He plays for a first division English team called the Newcastle, and he talked on ESPN about like 2 weeks ago while we were in quarantine, and they were just interviewing him. And he spoke. I saw this on the ESPN app. He spoke about how when he came from the MLS and came to England, how different it was, and how significant each game in England was because of relegation. And he didn't feel that in the MLS because there's not really any pressure. It's just playing soccer kind of. Like he said, it almost didn't feel pro over there compared to England. It's just he said he saw that, or he still lives there. He says he sees the youth development over there, and he sees the kids who grow up with this relegation process. It's just so much more competitive. You can see the difference in mentalities. I'm not sure if this will ever change. I saw plenty of articles, but people have been seeing articles forever, and there's lots of money, and because of the media and the fans and the owners aren't really willing to risk that. It's kind of an unfair system that's not really all about the players, and I'm not sure if it ever was about the players here in America, but all I know is that as sports continue to make millions and we have one of the biggest populations in the world, we should dominate all sports, and I think it's about time we make it about the players and see what happens.